Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we are diving into something really special. We're looking at a journey that spans over 3 decades. It goes from this foundational management theory written way back in 1995 all the way to a super profound retrospective published in 2026. Now, don't worry, this isn't some dry, dusty textbook theory. It's actually a living document from a leader looking back after 12 years of retirement. And he strips away all those awful corporate buzzwords to reveal what actually makes people want to follow you. Let's get right into it. Look at this quote: "Throw your ego in the trash." That is the raw, totally counterintuitive secret we're pulling right from our source today. Kind of jarring, right? I mean, we usually think of leadership as having this strong ego, being the smartest person in the room, having all the answers on day one. But the source insists this is literally the very first thing you have to toss out if you want a team to succeed. It sets the tone for a completely different vibe of management, one that's all about interpersonal responsibility, instead of just flexing hierarchical power. Which brings us to a huge question. Why on earth do we assume leadership means immediate control? The text challenges that old-school command and control paradigm right from the jump. And if you think about it logically, why should a team care at all about a new leader's goals? If you just strut in and start barking orders, you're leaning entirely on your job title, not your actual influence. So the source material really forces us to ask why anyone would willingly follow you without, first building a solid foundation of mutual understanding. To explain this whole dynamic, the author uses this absolutely brilliant metaphor: riding a wild horse. The source explains that leading a team is basically like trying to ride a free wild horse toward a specific destination. Now, a wild horse's very first instinct? Resistance. I mean, why shouldn't the horse decide the human, right? Why should the horse care about where the rider wants to go? If the destination is that important, the horse is probably thinking, well, go walk there yourself. It's a perfect way to show that before you can steer, you've got to gain cooperation, and you absolutely cannot do it by force. Okay, so the methodology breaks down into two distinct phases. Stage 1 is the gallop, which is all about harmony and acceptance. And stage 2 is the direction, where you actually focus on achieving the goal. The text makes it crystal clear. No jumping ahead. You have to put in the practical, trust-building work of stage 1 before you even think about exercising deeper influence in stage 2. Let's zoom in on that first phase. Stage 1, creating harmony. According to our source, this is actually the hardest part of leadership, just becoming an accepted presence in the ecosystem without freaking everybody out. And this quote brilliantly captures the mindset you need. It is permissible in the first stage to go in the direction the horse wants to go. That is some seriously counterintuitive advice. Most new managers, they want to come in and instantly pivot the team toward their shiny new goals to, prove they deserve the job. But the source argues the exact opposite. Don't force your goals right away. Move in the team's direction at first. By running right alongside them, you're not causing panic. Instead, you're building that absolutely crucial foundation of trust. So how do we achieve this gallop state? It takes practical action. First, you have to let the team lead initially, sincerely appreciating their unique ideas. Slowly but surely, you become an accepted presence, basically signaling, hey, I'm just here to help you do your work perfectly. And that builds profound trust. Actually, what's really fascinating from the source notes is that this whole concept was originally written as advice to the author's 16-year-old daughter, and she later used these exact principles to successfully manage a massive hospital team. It works because, at its core, it's all about fundamental human respect. Right, so once that harmony is locked in, the dynamic shifts. We move to stage 2, achieving the goal. This is where the leader firmly pursues the actual objective, completely stripping away any desire for personal glory. The leader must believe in the goal enough to pursue it completely alone. That is a pretty intense standard. Look, sometimes a team will just lose faith in its own abilities, and in those moments, the leader has to step up with stubbornness and determination based purely on conviction. You literally have to see only the target, completely ignoring the personal risks or the immediate pushback, because deep down, the destination serves the team's absolute best interests. You've got to believe in it so much that your conviction literally carries the team when they're doubting themselves. So how exactly do you steer this wild horse once you're galloping happily together? The source outlines a technique that's basically an invisible nudge. Here's how it works. You gently point out the weak spots in the team's beautiful ideas. Ideas that, by the way, you are also showing genuine enthusiasm for. Then you offer a slight alternative that magically solves those exact weaknesses. Crucially, though, you frame this solution as an evolution of their idea, maybe just with a few tiny renovations. And the best part? You let the team take all the credit. The shift in direction happens so gradually that the team feels 100% ownership of the new path. Which brings us to a real gut check question. Do you want to be right or do you want collaboration? Setting things up so the team looks wrong and you look like the smart savior, that only breeds opposition. It's a classic ego trap. But when you use that invisible nudge, the team members become full partners in the new goal. It's an approach built entirely on open feedback and mutual trust, rather than just dropping mandates from on high. Because shared ownership, that creates deep, unbreakable commitment. Moving on to the physics of teams. Vectors. So, what actually happens if a leader fails to get everyone aligned? The source takes a quick break from the horse metaphor here to hit us with a really brilliant physics analogy. In this context, think of vectors as the individual talents or experts on a team. Each one has a distinct direction and magnitude. So picture every highly skilled person on your team as an arrow, pointing in a specific direction with a specific amount of force. The leader's job is to keep an ear to the ground and listen for the slightest noises, those tiny misalignments between the vectors, and jump on them immediately. You have to fix them before those little noises escalate into full-blown destructive storms. Because here is the harsh reality of unguided talent. Without alignment, those talented vectors will pull in violently competing directions. They naturally become destructive to one another. It leaves a really bad taste in the group's mouth, and ultimately they will completely miss the shared goal, which, let's be honest, was the whole point of forming a team in the first place. The text warns us that a group of brilliant experts without a unified direction can actually tear an entire system apart from the inside out. Alignment is literally everything. And now, a 2026 perspective, the human legacy. We've reached the emotional climax of this explainer. The author jumps 31 years forward, looking back after a full decade of retirement, to add this incredibly profound layer of understanding to everything we've talked about. Just listen to this phenomenal realization. The first test of leadership isn't in the direction, but in entering the room. I really want to let that sink in for a second. True leadership isn't just about the grand vision or hitting those quarterly goals. It is fundamentally an expression of interpersonal responsibility. It's all about your presence. It's about how you make people feel the absolute second you walk through the door. The source shares this amazing little anecdote that proves it perfectly. Years after the author retired, his former team was getting into a pretty heated argument. Out of nowhere, one team member stopped the whole thing and asked, "Wait, what would Yehuda do in this situation?" The team remembered his daily code of action: arrive at work, throw your ego in the trash, begin the day. They didn't remember his specific corporate policies. They remembered his character. Because at the end of the day, people watch your actions way more closely than they listen to your words. And that brings us to the ultimate reward mentioned in the source material. Long after the title is gone, the character remains. Get this, even 12 years into retirement, this former manager and his old team still grab lunch every few months. The relationship just continues as if they only parted yesterday. Why? Because the foundation of their work wasn't based on a hierarchy, or fear, or corporate authority. It was based entirely on mutual human respect. And honestly, that is the true legacy of the Galloping Horse. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought directly from the 2026 retrospective. What kind of person do you remain when you are no longer a manager? It's a heavy question that asks us to look way past our titles, our daily tasks, and definitely our egos. Are you building a legacy of compliance, or are you building a legacy of genuine connection? Ponder that the next time you walk into a room. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope this totally changes the way you think about leading others.